Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Root of the Science podcast with your girl and with Annie. If you are new here, welcome. It's always so lovely to have new people listen in to the show. And if you're a regular, thank you as always for tuning in. I love having the regulars come back. Now, if you're already not doing so, make sure that you join the notification gang by following us on Spotify or Apple Podcast or wherever else you listen to your podcast, so that when a new episode drops, you'll be the first to know. You can follow on the various social media platforms at Root of the Sci Pod on Twitter and Instagram, or you can join the Facebook group, the Root of the Science Podcast. Most importantly, please make sure that you support the show by clicking on the support the show link so that you can help me bring in more episodes for you. It is in the episode description box. Thank you very much. Now, let's get into today's episode. My guest today is Tasvi Daya from South Africa. She is a PhD student in cancer research at the University of Witwatesrand. Her research focus is on understanding pancreatic cancer. If you do not know, this type of cancer is gaining momentum as the number of deaths in Africa are rising. And if not taken seriously, it can become the leading cause of cancer deaths by 2030, which is right around the corner. Tasvi will tell us more about this research and why it is so important that she's doing the research that she's doing. Further, apart from the science, we get to chat about the root of her science. How did she get into science in the first place? We chat about her academic journey, and we also learn more of the human side of Tasvi as she shares with us her passions. Tune in as we hear about all of this and so much more. Let's go. Hi Tasvi, welcome to the show.
Hi Anne, thanks so much for having me.
It is such a great pleasure. I'm so excited to chat with you today and for the audience to hear more about you. Now, first things first, can you please give us a brief introduction? Who is Tasvi? Where are you currently based? What are you currently doing? Just in brief.
Okay, perfect. I'm Tasvi Daya. I'm a 25-year-old South African PhD student, and I'm studying the potential treatments in pancreatic cancer. And I'm doing this at the University of Witwatersrand in Johannesburg.
Oh, fantastic. I'm so excited to chat to you about your topic. This is actually the first time I've had somebody do that. So we're going to get into all of that.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah. We're going to get into all of that later. But, before we get into the science, it's always important for us to know you away from, being a PhD candidate, because you are a human being away from, not saying that you're not a human being, but you know what I mean?
Yes.
That you are a human being. So you have a passion for dance and, TV art. So I have a question, right? If you could be in a dream show of sort, if you could have your own dream show where, you get to be the star of the show, what would it be all about?
Yes, I love, dancing and TV art, dramatic arts. I can't say that I haven't thought about starting a YouTube channel.
Yeah.
But I don't have much experience in either of them, professionally. But I think if I had my own dream show, it would either be a comedy series like The Big Bang Theory. I'm not sure if you're familiar with it.
Oh, yes, of course.
Yes. So I think The Big Bang Theory is actually along the lines that I'd want, because if you're familiar with Amy, she's actually played by a woman who is a neuroscientist in real life. So it would be really cool, if Netflix called me up, told me come and play the role of a cancer biologist. I would happily agree.
Oh, fantastic.
Yeah.
Yo, Netflix, if you're listening to this, please hit Tasvi up. Her details are going to be at the bottom of this podcast. We're putting it out there.
Yes, please.
No, I love that. So it's you'd love to be an actress like Amy, and so it's not presenting, it's more acting wise, right?
Yes, but I wouldn't mind doing presenting either. I think I actually have more experience in presenting than in acting. So yeah, that would be right up my alley.
Yeah, I mean, and if Amy is anything to go by, and also I think like Mr. Bean is also like an engineer or something. So hey, girl,
Yes.
there is potential. You are still only 25. There's still a lot of years left in this world. So
Yes,
any
definitely.
anything could literally happen. So I'll be so excited like when I see you on our TV screens. So yeah, no, I hope that works
Thank you.
out. I hope that
Definitely.
works
I hope
out.
so too.
Yeah, no, it's quite interesting that you said even in your acting, it would be something scientific. So, with that being said,
Mm.
clearly science is something that's close to your heart, right? So, from the beginning, let's rewind all the way back to the genesis. Okay, how did you get into science? Was it something that you've always wanted to do, or were there some people who motivated you to get into the space, or was it one of those things that sort of happened and you're like, oops, okay, I'm here.
Mm.
What is the root of your science?
Yeah. So, and science is a huge domain. And, like in high school, I always liked biology, which is more focused on the body and cells and the environment. But in high school, science is also made up of chemistry and physics, both of which were not my favorite at all. So I would say, like, when I was studying, I was always excited to read about biology. And that's how I decided, to go into a BSc, which is a Bachelor of Science. And and then it was only during my undergraduate degree that I realized, in simple terms, what I really wanted to do, which was to work with drugs and, just see how does it affect cells or bacteria or viruses or plants or animals. Basically, I just wanted to get my hands on some drugs and work with them. And, by drugs, I mean medication and
I
all
love that
those sorts of things.
disclaimer. Like, I love that disclaimer. You're like, hey, I'm not a drug addict.
Yes.
Yes.
And I think
Right.
that's what influenced the path, that
Mm,
I took in my post grad studies.
okay.
So, in hindsight, I would say technically I always liked science, but I didn't start off knowing exactly where I wanted to be. I just knew that science was for me. And of course, when I matriculated, I had a science teacher who was very passionate about science. And I think that's what also brought science out in me a bit more. Yeah.
Mm, mm. That's so beautiful. Teachers are honestly a godsend because they really do shape and mold and have such a huge influence on so many kids and the careers that they get into. So you said that in your undergraduate you were still sort of like you didn't know what science you're doing. So you matriculated, you go and pursue what degree for undergrad?
So I pursued a BSc General, which is a
Okay.
general science degree at Wits. But you get to choose your electives. So I chose more biological substances, biological subjects.
Yeah.
That's what I chose. Yeah.
Okay, no, great. So then I think with that BSc general, it gave you a nice feel of like a lot of various different things. And then that's when you're like, okay, this is what I want to obviously do. So in honors, is that when you started to honors and maybe your masters, you started to narrow down your area of expertise?
Yes, definitely. Actually, I would say, undergrad is obviously very important. I mean, you're getting your degree, but honors it was mind blowing for me because that's
Mhm.
when, well, at Wits, I can't speak for other universities, but for Wits, in the honors degree, it's when you actually get to work on an actual research project in a lab, a real lab. So, you pick which lab you'd like to go into based on what field you like, and you have to do a project. And that's when I realized there's so much I don't know, and not knowing makes me want to know, curiosity. So I think that's when I really, my passion for science grew even more. It was in my honors year, and then masters again. It's almost the same feeling of knowing something, but knowing that there's still more to uncover to the story.
Mm. And I think that is the whole essence um, of being a scientist. It's the
Yes,
acknowledgement that you don't know everything and you are trying to find an answer to something. And I know even
exactly.
my past lecturers always used to say that because like when you'd go to them and you're like, I don't know what I'm doing, and he's like, yes, you're doing science. That means you're doing science, because
Exactly.
honestly, we as scientists, we don't know. We just, of course, we know to a certain extent, and that's why you are doing what you're doing, because we don't know what you want to find out. So
Mm.
it is quite beautiful. Okay, so you finished your honors. You sort of figured out your what you want to do. So what were you specializing in for your masters?
So in my master's, I specialized in protein biochemistry.
Oh, okay.
So that's, yes. So it's basically looking at proteins and seeing how they interact with other proteins, maybe interacting with drugs, the activity, the structure. Yes, more biochemical methods and techniques.
No, that's quite interesting, and it actually links up to my
Yes.
follow-up question, because
Okay.
you're now doing more of like a in your PhD, it's more of like a medical sciences than a biochemistry science. Am I correct?
I wouldn't specifically say medical sciences, but it's more of a cancer biology, which is it is different from protein biochemistry. Yes.
Yeah, okay, cool. So there was like a segue, and I think most people, specifically even in academia, not away from academia rather, are unaware that at PhD level, heck, even at master's level, you can change like the your specialization. Where you can do one particular thing and then do some. You can be in biochemistry and then even go to like, I don't know, entomology, if you find that interesting. And people would be like, how? But like, I think people have done it. So for you, you went from biochemistry to cancer research. So how was that sort of shift for you? Was there a huge difference, if any?
Definitely, it was a huge difference.
Mm.
I think so. In 2021, which was last year, I completed my master's in biochemistry, as you mentioned. Um, and now I work in cancer biology. So the two fields, I'm not going to say that they're miles apart from each other, but the techniques and the theories and the everyday tasks are very, very different.
Mm, mm.
So in the beginning, it was extremely overwhelming. I mean, I had to kind of relearn a whole new field while getting used to a new team. And, in cancer biology, you work with cancer cells. And of course, for the first few times, I killed myself. And
Yeah.
that was just so chaotic for me. But I think the internal pressure that's, coming from myself to get up to speed, it was a bit too much. And, I had to just take it one day at a time. I had to force myself to actually take it one step at a time. So I think the most challenging part was actually feeling, unworthy of being a
Mm,
PhD student. Because,
mm.
at that point in your academic career, it's assumed that you're starting to think more critically about your field
Yes.
and your contributions. Yes. And like having factual opinions on things that you've experienced. But I felt like I was back to square one.
Mm.
Um, but it's now 2022 and I have a completely new outlook on that part. At least now I'm not killing my poor self. um, but I realize now that I had to retrain in a new field, learn new things, and I like to think that I adjusted very well to my new environment. And I've got techniques and skills and knowledge in multiple fields of research. So I know that when I enter the working world or any other lab or field, I have no fear that I'm not going to be able to cope, or adjust. So yeah, it was very tough at first, but you can't grow by staying in your comfort zone, right?
No, for sure. And you speak, I even relate with that as well, that like when people assume you're a PhD, they're like, oh my goodness, you are so smart, Tasvi. Like, what? You can become
Yes,
a doctor. And then you're like, I'm so smart. Why am I killing my cancer cells? Like, what's wrong with me? You know, like,
exactly.
what is this
Yes.
feeling? And you write about that internal struggle. For me, it was also that beginning, like, why am I not getting this? Like, what is wrong
Hmm.
with me? What is that thing? And I had a friend who is finished their PhD, and she was like to me, no, Anne, listen, that is literally doing your PhD. There's just so many phases
Yes.
where you literally are like out of your depths. And I think many people, even who are not in academia, when you do something new, of course the beginning is going to be so
Yes.
overwhelming, so overwhelming,
Definitely.
and you are like just trying to keep your head above water, and you're continuously drowning and
Hmm.
swallowing water. But then over time, like,
Exactly.
okay, you know what, I'm actually wading. Okay, you know what, I'm actually using my legs. Okay, you know, like slowly but surely you start to sort of
Yes.
find your balance. And you're right, if when you do move into another lab or into industry, the working environment,
Hmm.
you are going to be very well equipped. And that's also the beauty of a PhD. You learn so many other
Yes.
skills that makes you actually ready. And also,
Yes. Excellent. Yes.
yeah, and you also just have some like deep internal issues that you also have to overcome. Like it's a lot,
Yeah.
it's a lot,
It's
but
a lot. It is.
it's a lot, but we get it. Okay, so currently you are a
Yeah.
PhD student in cancer biology, like you mentioned. You are
Mhm.
specifically researching pancreatic cancer, and your work involves the testing and investigation of several drugs on pancreatic cancer cells to find a perfect combination of these drugs that have a
Mhm.
detrimental effect on cancer cells while not causing harm to the healthy cells. Okay, that was a mouthful
Yeah.
from me. So I just want you to please just give us an overview about your research. Tell us more about it, and also just the importance behind this research.
Okay. So what you currently mentioned is spot on. I work on establishing the relationship between pancreatic cancer and cholesterol, and what role does cholesterol play in keeping the cancer cells alive and moving, and most of all, resistant. So, I'm not sure if you know, but drug resistance, it's a huge bottleneck in research. It's huge. Um, so I look at specific drugs and some of the combinations of these drugs to see, like you've mentioned, which combination would be the most harmful to the cancer cells, but not that toxic to the normal cells. And I think the importance of this research is trying to curb drug resistance. That's the first one. And also, pancreatic cancer is one of the most deadliest cancers because it goes about, it's very sneaky. You don't actually notice. There's no symptoms to actually say that this person has pancreatic cancer until those symptoms become really bad. And then, is it assessed? So, yeah, it's also very important to work on early diagnosis of pancreatic cancer. That's also something that is coming, slowly into play with precision medicine and, bioinformatic tools. But unfortunately, that's not part of my project, but it's very interesting as well.
Wow, what important work, and especially about this pancreatic cancer, like you said. So the drugs that are
Mm,
being developed, obviously, it's still in the research um, method in the beginning.
yeah.
Ideally, when the research is completed, um, at what stage would the person be when they are diagnosed with like that, okay, they have the severe pancreatic cancer, or is it still at early detection stage?
No, it's severe. So the problem with pancreatic cancer, with in terms of the diagnosis, is that it's normally at the stage where the tumor is now metastatic. So that means that it's being spread or it moves around the body, and then it becomes difficult to actually remove the tumor surgically. So then they have to go on, therapy like chemotherapy and drug treatments or cocktails, like if you may have heard that word before. And basically the problem with that is then the drug resistance. So it's just like problem on top of problem on top of a problem with pancreatic cancer. So it would be best if, to diagnose pancreatic cancer early. But like I said, the symptoms, it's so common to that of other infections. It could be just, an inflamed pancreas. It could even be a liver infection. And that's how it's masked during early diagnosis. Yeah.
What that's really, that's really, really tragic that so many people
Yes.
are
Definitely.
obviously unaware that they have it until it's too late. So no,
Mm,
I fully wish you all of the best in developing this drug, because it's obviously so important. And I think we've seen
yes.
nowadays that they are I don't know if this is the correct term to say, because of course I'm not in cancer research, but like
Mhm.
it seems like cancer is on the rise now. Or is it just more that we have the resources to detect it more? Or is it like something common where one can say that? Because it just seems like you're hearing a lot more people versus 10 years ago are being diagnosed with various different types of cancers, you know.
Yeah. No, I think, over the years it's always been rising and rising and rising. And like an interesting fact that I actually read a couple of months ago is that if we don't, I'm just focusing a bit on pancreatic cancer. So if we don't, try and solve this, I don't want to say solve the problem, but if we don't, focus on pancreatic cancer now, it may actually become the leading cause of cancer-related deaths in 2030. And that's around the corner.
It's
It's
literally
literally
just
around the corner.
now. It's less than 10 years.
Yes,
What?
yes. So you see, it's just growing. It's a growing concern, and that's why it's so important to focus on it. Is what all cancers are as important, though.
Of course, yeah, of course. Oh man.
Yeah.
No, please, guys, do what you need to do, because so many people are depending on it.
Yes,
And that is such a scary statistic. But
it is.
yeah, and I wish you like all of the best. So yo,
Thank you.
sorry, like that just doomed and gloomed me for a bit. So
Sorry.
no, but I honestly wish you all of the best, to see. This sounds like very exciting, very innovative research, and obviously so important. And I'm sure you and your team and all the other people who are working on this are gonna find, very many exciting discoveries that are going to be useful to all of us here, right? So I just wanted to move along, right? So you obviously, in terms of your journey, has it always been straight academic, or have you worked outside and done some jobs? Because like, with some people, they're like, oh no, once you do a PhD, you haven't had experience in the what you call it, in the working field. So for you, when you with your journey, have you had the opportunity to work outside, or has it just been a linear journey of studying all the way through?
So, and so what happened was I just had a straight academic journey. I was very lucky that, I moved through my degrees quite quickly. So I went through my undergrad, straight into honors, straight into masters, and now into PhD. But I had to stop for a moment before my PhD started, and that's obviously when I switched my field. And I had to actually think about what I'm doing because I was moving so fast that I didn't actually know where I was going. I was just moving to an unknown place. I had no idea where I wanted to go. Why am I going this way? Why am I doing this? And I think that's also what brought on the whole switch of fields because I needed to start really connecting with what I want to do. So I didn't work outside of academia throughout those degrees. But before I started my PhD, I started picking up more skills like presenting and communicating. And I started, looking at my LinkedIn profile a little bit more carefully, trying to upgrade that. And now I actually do have a part-time freelance, job. It's something very small, but it's something very meaningful to me, and it gives me a lot of comfort in what I'm doing. Basically, I summarize science articles in different fields. So again, switching fields helped me because I can be able to be flexible in different fields as well. Yeah, so it only started now, but if I could turn back time, I would have definitely looked for something while I was studying. I don't think I would have stopped my studies, but I would have tried to find something to fit in with my studies.
No, that's quite interesting. And I love that you had a moment of just like, wait a minute, what am I doing? Because
Yes,
sometimes being sometimes being a student who achieves well and sort of has good academic record, and you're just going on to next, you don't really realize like, okay, what am I currently doing, where do I want to go? Because
exactly.
yeah, and funny
Yes,
enough, I feel like sometimes the road is sort of like I want to say painted for you, and you don't have the
yes,
autonomy to be like, is this really what I'm doing? Or is it just like, oh, undergrad,
exactly.
honors, masters, PhD, and then somebody's like, yeah, after this you do a postdoc, after this then you become a lecturer, and you're like,
Yes,
whoa, is this really what
I
I want
know.
to do?
Exactly.
Yeah.
What you are saying is the exact same thing that I experienced. So
Mm.
it's so true. Yeah,
Yeah, no, and it's so important. And I love what you said, that sometimes there is this thing of like, why are you doing a side gig, or why are you doing a side job? But like you said, for you, doing this freelance job that you're doing uh, kind of gives you like the skills, it makes you a better scientist as well, because you work with other different, like you open your horizons and you also see what other people are doing. And for me, I had a moment where somebody in my academic journey was telling me that what I was doing was also not right. Like, you need to focus on just doing school. But I also had that moment of suffocation of like, wait, what am I actually doing? Like, where is this going? And I've realized how doing these other things is so important, because it allows you to also develop all these other like skills that actually help your PhD without knowing. So I'm always team, do what you need to do. Like,
yes. And
where you find yourself in the process as well.
exactly. I agree with everything that you've said. And I think even, by saying this freelance or part-time job, it's not even that you need to focus on a job like in the
Mm,
conventional sense. There's so many other things you can do. You can be a part of like community programs
mm,
or,
mm,
a team in your own unit or institution. Have a
mm,
blog, be a
mm,
volunteer, have your side hustle, whatever
mm.
that is. It's it's not about having a job for having a job. It's about what are you getting from that job or activity. And these it's all great for like upskilling yourself. Yeah, and I mean, you never know who you may connect with while doing these things, and that could be an
Girl.
opportunity to get a job in the future, right?
Precisely. Like, you and I are on the same wavelength. We could chat about this for days.
Yes.
Because and also, just apart from that, we live in South Africa, right, where there is a lot of youth unemployment. The world is not like how it was 15 years ago, where if you get a PhD, you're guaranteed to get a job. There are so many, you have to be so well aware of your environment, um like okay, if I get my PhD, not saying that the job market is actually quite difficult. And like you said about networking, these small things, and I say small, or community projects, or the things that you do, might give you that person who's like, oh yeah, no, I know somebody who's actually doing a PhD in cancer research, and there's your job
Yes,
doing something
exactly.
completely
Exactly.
random. So like, I'm always
Absolutely.
all for that. And I firmly believe that, our generation of scientists, we are such a, I love this term, like the new age scientist, where we are
Yes.
so like we like a Swiss knife, like we have so many skills, like be it a YouTube blog, whatever.
Yes.
And it's so cool because it makes us who we are. And like you said, it just opens up so many other things. So, oh man, I'm so
I
passionate
agree.
about this, and I wish more people could have that foresight, if I can say that, because it's really sad
Yeah.
you sometimes invest all of your years only focusing on one thing, and then you get to the end and then you're like, oh my God, what am I going to do? Like,
that's the point, you know. That's what ends up happening to a lot of people. They just do this PhD or postdoc, whatever it is, and then they realize they didn't do anything else in that time, you know.
Yeah.
So
No.
yeah, I agree with you.
Yeah, so like I said, this is like such a passion. Like I can speak about this for days. Like, so I'm so glad
Me too.
that you are about this. And you know, one of the most important things that I love to discuss on the show, while we're talking about finding ourselves and not being so all consumed in our PhD, because the PhD obviously has its ups and downs, which affects somebody's mental health, right? So I just wanted to ask you, in your personal experience, not only your PhD, heck, even just your whole academic career, because one cannot say that it only starts in PhD, because even in, like, I only look back now and I'm like, oh my goodness, I went through it in undergrad as well, but I just didn't realize I was going through it. But I just wanted to ask you, like, how do you manage your mental health when you have a lot of things going on, and you know, you're like during those ups and downs, like how do you get sort of center yourself again to be like, you know what, let me try this again?
So, you know, I think mental health is so important. And I also think for me, it started with PhD. I was lucky that throughout my other degrees, I actually had a very nice experience, but also take into account that those were degrees before COVID. So life was pretty nice. I'm not gonna lie, before COVID. You know, I can honestly say that my master's degree, as well as my honors, was the best years of my life. I had lots of fun. I had a very wholesome experience. So, you know, when I started with PhD and thinking about my future and all of that sort of things, it's when, you know, your mental health can become affected. So, you know, I'm sure you know this, but most times when someone is completing their PhD, they generally like 24 years or older. I'm not sure if it differs, you know, in other fields, but you know, during the years, most of our friends and family at this time or around that age, they starting to work and earn salaries. Perhaps they buying their own cars or homes. And then there's us, PhD students, who are living off basic funding.
Oh
Some
my
of us are not
goodness.
even lucky to get funding.
Yeah, true.
We stress about being overqualified to work. We stress about finishing our projects in time. uh, so it just gets very difficult sometimes. And, you know, I'm sure any PhD student can tell you this, but there's definitely been a few times when I also wanted to quit and just start working, or, you know, just tell myself that maybe I'll come back after a few years. But I am really glad that I stayed, because, you know, doing a PhD, you know, it's such a personal decision. It's a decision that only you can make. You cannot ask your parents what they think. You cannot ask your friends what they think. You know, it's such a personal decision. So, but along with its cons, to be honest, I can't wait to have a degree that I can use to possibly help, you know, change the world. I mean, some mornings I wake up and I think to myself, wow, the work that I do today can literally be the solution in saving a person's life, or giving that person more time to experience life, you know? And sometimes that makes it all worth it, you know? And then being overqualified, you know, interestingly, I seen an article that was written in December last year, which is quite recent. And it said that South Africa needs to actually produce more PhD graduates. And I've connected with some pharmaceutical professionals, you know, over the past few months. And they've also said to me that PhDs are now being more sought after because of their skills. So I don't think being so I don't think, you know, overqualified will be as big of an issue as it may have been a couple of years ago. I think it's still there, of course, definitely. But according to what I've heard, I think if you know how to use your PhD, I don't think you would have that problem as such. yeah, but in terms of mental health, although there are times when it gets really, really tough, um, I just like to think of how far I've come, especially me switching and coming from a different field, and how far I can go. And it always gets me through. But I'm sure you can definitely, relate to this experiences.
Oh, for sure, for sure. They are. I, like that size says it all, but we try again.
Yes.
We try again, and I love what you said about it being such a personal issue, because it honestly
Mm,
is. It's, and I think that's what I'm starting to learn in my second year PhD, because the first year
yeah.
was all exciting, like, oh my goodness, I'm doing PhD, like, oh yes.
Yeah.
But now, like you said,
Yes.
we're doing a PhD in COVID times, which is just insane in its own sense. And then things are not
Mm,
working as they were meant to. Deadlines are not necessarily being met, and you're like, oh my gosh.
yes.
So now it's that moment where you sit with yourself, like, surely I should just give up. But then like you said, you sit back
Yes.
and you're like, okay, but I've done 2 years. Like, you are legit
Yeah,
in the
exactly.
middle.
Too late now.
Like, do I start again? So yeah, we just try once
Yeah.
again. And yeah, no, it's a very much a personal decision. Tasvi, as we are
Mm,
wrapping up, um
yeah.
while we are on this, I just wanted to ask you, with everything that you've said, when you've shared to us your journey and all of your highs, your lows, um what is that one piece of golden advice or golden nuggets that you'd like to impart on somebody who's listening, be it who's inspired by your journey in science or just in life, generally?
Okay. What I would definitely say is, in science, you need passion, you need direction, and you need execution. So I strongly encourage the youth to enter the STEM field. It's such a beautiful field. And science in specific, I can only talk about science, of course. Science is just one of the most amazing fields. As a PhD student, and I know as a scientist, there will never be 2 days that are the same. In this past 3 months of 2022, I've not had a day that's the same. If you're interested in being a scientist, having the passion, the direction, and execution is important. So, in terms of direction, that's knowing where you want to go and how to get there. So, the earlier you know this, the better. And once you know where you'd like to end up, it becomes so much easier to talk to people who are already there. Try to get someone to mentor you or to guide you. Those are such great tactics to learn more about science, to learn more about the real world. And I think that is a really golden tactic to
Mm,
use.
mm,
And you should then be perfectly fine. And also, if you are interested in science in specific, you should join or engage in science communication. I mean, that's something that I started exploring in my first year of PhD,
mm,
and it's opened up some really great opportunities for me. Like, for example, like this podcast. It's so
mm,
nice to communicate and talk about science.
mm.
So yeah, I think science is definitely the way forward, of course. And I'm always open to help anyone with information or guidance if they need it, especially the youth.
Mm.
But I think just having that direction, I would say, is the most important thing in science. Because, like we've mentioned before, you can end up just going and going and going and going
Yeah.
and getting all these degrees, and then you don't know what to do with it,
Yeah.
you know?
Mm.
Mm.
No, I hear you. I hear you so much, Tasvi. And thank you so much for that wonderful piece of advice. And definitely, if somebody does want to connect, your details are going to be in the show notes. So please send her a message on Twitter as well. She answers her DMs. So
Yes.
yes, or wherever else. So please do so. I can attest to that. So yeah, with that being said, Tusby, oh my goodness, I loved our chat so much, but we've come to the end of the show. Thank you, thank you, thank you so much for coming on and chatting with me. I had such a great time.
Thank you so much, and for giving me the opportunity to come here. I loved it, and I love talking about these issues. I think more and
Mhm.
more people need to hear the issues that we face as
Mhm.
scientists.
Yeah, for sure. And to everybody else who's tuned in, thank you so much for tuning into another episode of the Root of the Science podcast with your girl and with an E. Until next time, goodbye.